So I realized yesterday that I missed the live stream, but I watched it again last night, or I watched it for the first time last night. So to tell you the truth, I'm not sure exactly what I'm getting out of it anymore. Yesterday, Steph was talking about basically growth and setting priorities so that the things that you're doing are things that are adding growth to your business. Today, I think she's going to be talking about setting priorities and how you got to let some of those distractions go, things that you think are important at the time. Really evaluate those and see if you're going to let them distract you from what it is that you want to get done, because there are things, notifications that pop up all the time that we feel like we need to address, but they're not really always necessary at the time they don't need immediate attention. So a good portion of today was spent building 3D trees for the model, because the plan and the landscape are not quite finalized yet. So the only thing I can kind of progress forward are some of the parts and the components that are going to go into making the model look good. So I built a bunch of 3D trees and I tried to stream it to YouTube. I'm going to see, it recorded it, but I need to be able to get that recording off YouTube, so I'm going to try to do that now. And this is that recording. Kind of walk you through the process.
Okay, so let's make a tree. First thing you want to do is find a file, like a PNG file or a SketchUp file that has a 2D image of a tree, something that has the background already cut out. I like to create a folder that I can manage my tree in, so I create a folder with that name of the tree. That way I'll put all the associated files into that folder. So here we have a 2D tree. You can see it's just got one face to it. Basically, it's a PNG file that has the background cut out. So we'll open up our materials palette and we'll go to select material, and we will pick the tree, and then down at the image map section you will open up this texture, this image, in your photo editing program. I use Photoshop. You'll save this as a new PNG file in the folder that we created earlier. I like to rename everything so it's real consistent and clean. And then we're going to start to take sections of this tree and save them out as individual files. So take the top of the tree and highlight around with the selection tool until you can create a selection around this area. Copy that, and then we'll paste it onto a new layer. And then right click on the new layer and say duplicate layer, and then in your destination you can say new, and then I'll create a new layer. There's a couple ways to do this. I do it a little bit different this time than I will next time. You'll see there's a little change in it. So we'll crop this down and do a save as and name it 01. Next thing you want to do is grab a branch. So I will take a selection of this tree, copy it. This time I create a new file. It grabs the settings from that copy, and then you can paste in and delete out your background layer. Now we want to clean this up a bit because we want it to look like it's a couple individual branches. So we'll go through and we will pick a brush where we can erase and give kind of a natural look. Now that we have this, we're going to crop it back down just to make the image exactly the size that it is. And we'll save that as a new file, O2. Now we'll open Illustrator. You don't have to create an artboard, but I created one in this case, and then I drag in the PNG file on top of it. You could just drive the PNG file directly into the empty space. Then we want to create a live trace. You want to change the settings of the live trace so that it picks up all of the image. So I'm going to create a custom one. Slide that over all the way to where the whole thing is either black or white. And then export that to a DWG file into our same folder that we made earlier. And I usually call it the same thing the PNG file is called. That way you know they're related. So now we have a vector drawing, outline drawing of this PNG file. So this time I drag in the image, do a live trace, adjust the threshold, and export to DWG. So now you got to clean these files up. You got to make them just 2D line work, get rid of the hatch. So that's what I do here. You want to make sure that you keep the outside binding rectangle, because we're going to align that image up with that rectangle in Photoshop using that rectangle as a base. So you want to make sure you maintain that in your CAD file. Now we need to open up a SketchUp version that will allow us to bring in CAD files, and we'll bring those two CAD files into each their own individual plan so that we can align the PNG file on top of them. Save this file with the same name as the PNG file. Now we're going to connect these lines to create a face. So any way that you would typically do that in SketchUp, you want to create the entire rectangle and then highlight everything, select everything, and intersect all the selected items so that you can create individual faces outlined by these polylines. Then go through and cut out all the holes that were in the PNG file, basically the non-background empty space of the PNG file. If there's some that are trouble, just go ahead and delete them. If they're too small, doesn't matter. This is going to be a very low poly count tree that will look good in virtual reality for design purposes. This is not a highly realistic tree. Now we're going to import our PNG file and bring it in as a texture to add to that surface. So click, drag it out to any kind of scale and apply it. Now we want to go to adjust that texture, the position, click on that rectangle that we have in there, drag out the circle to the other side, and to scale that and snap to that rectangle. Now we have our PNG file overlaid exactly onto our cutout. So we can go through and delete our rectangle now. Rotate it up so that the tree will have branches. Now I'm going to go ahead and take one of these and turn it horizontal so that we can create some branches that alternate around the tree at a different angle. And you'll save that one with a subcategory of -H or something like that. You can angle this up a little bit so it's not just completely flat but has a little bit of lift to it, like a branch would. We're going to do the exact same thing we did with the previous image with this image here. So we'll open up our main image file, and what we want to start doing is bringing in all these SketchUp files that we made previously to create the shape of the tree. We'll go in later and clean up the back side of these images. I forgot to add the texture to both sides, but we can always reload those files and add the texture to both sides. So I'm going to do that here. Choose your paint bucket. Now we can just right click this and say reload, and it'll pick the file and say open, and it'll reload that in to our SketchUp model. Now we have our 3D tree, and this tree will be good for virtual reality systems or just general SketchUp files that you're gonna possibly animate around. The one last thing we're going to do with this tree is we're going to make it follow you. So when you are just panning around or have some kind of animation in SketchUp, it will pan around with you. But first you got to get rid of all this line work. So you just go through and hold down Shift with your eraser, and you can erase all this line work. Actually, after doing this, I found a faster way. Just highlight everything and then click out, hold down Alt, I believe, and click the surface and then say hide, and that'll hide all the edges while deselecting the actual plant surface. So now that you got everything cleaned up, select everything and make it a component. And you want to be able to have this always face the camera, rename it, matching all your other naming standards that you got. And in order to have this thing rotate at the same point, you want to create, change your axis point and put that right at the base of the trunk of the tree. So when it's facing the camera, it'll rotate around that trunk axis. So now you have a tree that's 3D, but it also rotates with you and follows the camera. So right click on that component and do Save As, and save it out as its own unique file. That way when you have a new model file, you can actually just import that one tree, and you know it's just that clean one component coming in to your file without any excess materials or other components. Go back through your file structure here and clean up a bunch of backup files, erase your drawing files since you don't need those anymore. And I usually keep my PNG files even though they're actually embedded into the SketchUp file. And that's pretty much it.